Today I bring you my preliminary deck list for the new Neo Nectar boss unit coming out of V Clan Collection Volume 6, Return of Eternity, Grajiorl Dragon. With this being a preliminary deck list, my goal is to provide you all a deck list that you can easily learn what the deck can do as consistently as possible, so then you can take it off on your own and change up your ratios, include whatever tech cards you feel are necessary for your own personal play style or the meta you're facing. So my reasoning for wanting to build a deck around Gajiorl Dragon is because it takes heavy inspiration from the old V-era boss card, Arboros Dragon Sephiroth. Sephiroth holds a special place in my heart because up until that point, I'd only ever net decked. But I was starting to feel unfulfilled by just net decking. So Sephiroth was the first deck that I started testing my own ideas out and pretty much built on my own, and it felt very rewarding. And ever since then, I've been trying to build my own decks. So with that being said, let's get into my list. Let's start here with our boss card, Grajiorl Dragon. It's got three really neat effects. The first one being sort of the theme of the entire deck, and why it relates to Sephiroth, is that as long as this card's on Vanguard Circle, all plant tokens called are what I like to call the improved plant tokens. That being, they're 10k power with 10k shield and can both boost and intercept. Real upgrade from just the 5ks that you call with the pretty much all other Neo Nectar support in the V era. The other nice thing Grajiorl Dragon provides is those plant tokens can intercept from the back row, meaning you have access to way more shield value in this deck than any previous version of Neo Nectar. Furthermore, I really like this card because once per turn, it can generate you 2 plant tokens pretty much for free. You just have to make sure you have a normal unit in your drop zone to put on your bottom of your deck. But that really isn't much of a cost. Over the game, you will naturally get normal units into the drop zone through guarding and other means. So, all in all, really easy condition to meet just to get 2 free attackers or boosters and just 20k value worth in shield. Furthermore, that second effect is really good in supporting and setting up its final effect, which for the cost of a counterblast lets you draw a card and choose 2 cards from your hand and call them to rearguard circles with plant tokens on them. This effect enables up to 5 attacks for this deck, meaning not only does it have access to easy attackers and boosters in the set, extra shield value, but multi-attack, which makes this deck sound really insane on paper from the get-go. This card really impressed me in the fact that it's both flexible and also self-sufficient, in that it generates the plant tokens you need for its multi-attack combo, and also its multi-attack combo draws you a card to mitigate the fact that you're committing 2 cards from hand, or up to 2 cards from hand, for that multi-attack. Furthermore, you can always choose not to use that multi-attack and just keep the tokens on board for the extra shield value. All in all, making this card feel really good. The next card I wanted to talk about was the new Grade 2 from Clan Collection supporting Grajiorl Dragon, Internal Stability Grajiorl Dragon. It has 2 very nice abilities, the first of which letting you check top 7 for the Grade 3 Grajiorl Dragon when placed on Vanguard Circle, and putting it into your hand. So this really makes it a lot easier to more consistently get to your Grade 3 Grajiorl Dragon. For a deck that wants to be on that boss card, having an extra searcher like this is amazing. But that's not all it does. If you don't add a Grajiorl Dragon, which you can choose to do, you can instead call one of the improved plant tokens to rearguard circle. This means that you can get extra attacks for more aggression, or just a more powerful booster for the Vanguard to try to force more guard out of your opponent, or for your opponent to take early hits. Of note, if you call the plant token to the back, you can't intercept with it until you go up to the Grade 3 Grajiorl Dragon, but just that extra pressure on board is really nice. Finally, rounding off this card is its second ability, that when it's placed on rearguard circle with the plant token that's 10k power or greater, this unit gets an extra 15,000 until end of turn. One of the things with multi-attack decks, especially now in the era, is they need a way to gain power, whether that be through effects or be able to generate multiple force markers. So with a card like this, the deck goes in the route of card effects providing the power, since it can only gain 1 force marker per turn. This makes this card really great in this deck, and a really great follow-up attack when your Vanguard for your final 2 attacks in the turn, just to put way more pressure on your opponent, and gaining 15k means this card's hitting some really great numbers, especially with force markers. Of note with this effect, it doesn't read that you need to call it on the improved plant tokens, so if you have a regular plant token on a force marker, or with any sort of buff that increases power to 10,000 or greater, you can call it on top of it, meaning this card's really flexible as well and not as stringent as it may seem at first glance. The next card I want to talk about here is the Grade 1 from the set, Budding Performance Grajiorl Dragon. So Grade 1 version of Grajiorl Dragon. It too has a very similar skill to the Grade 2 in that when placed on Vanguard Circle, you can check top 7, but instead you try to search for the Grade 2. This is really nice for some ride consistency, and while this deck doesn't need these Grajiorl Dragons in Soul for any other effects, the fact that the Grade 1 and Grade 2 can help you build up into a consistent ride line to get to that Grade 3 Grajiorl Dragon is really nice. Furthermore, it does have that other effect, where if you choose not to add a card or you have no targets, you can gall one of the improved plant tokens. So everything I said for the Grade 2 on that effect also applies to this card. Finally, this card also has an ability when placed on a rearguard circle with a plant token with 10,000 power or greater. Instead of getting 15k though, it draws you a card and gives you an extra 5,000 power. That extra 5,000 really helps it hit some better numbers, as it's a 13k on its own, a 23k if it's placed on a force marker, which means it hits really good numbers and can hit over defenses as well. Not to mention that draw is just insane to keep overall hand advantage, especially since Grajiorl Dragon only draws you 1 while calling 2 cards from hand, so this makes up for that 1 extra card. All in all, cards like this let you draw just mean that you have a bigger hand to do more with, and you have so much shield value with the plant tokens being able to intercept from the back row with 10k shield, that overall it makes this a really tanky yet aggressive deck. Moving on to more great call targets for Grajiorl Dragon, we've got the Grade 2 Maiden of Fallvine, whose skill is very similar to the Grade 1 Grajiorl Dragon, except it can be called on a rearguard circle with any plant token, but it still gets you the draw and the 5k. So everything I said about the Grade 1 Grajiorl Dragon also applies to this card. The other nice thing is it can intercept during your opponent's turn, so you can clear up to call 2 more plant tokens with Grajiorl Dragon to set up for next turn. So this card's definitely ideal, and thankfully it was reprinted in the set with Grajiorl Dragon. Our next big call target is Deep Green Lord Master Wisteria. I really like this card because I feel like it really elevates the deck to the next level in the crazy plays it can do. So Master Wisteria has 2 effects. The first one I think is the most notable one, being that when it's placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle, including by card's abilities, you can counterblast 1, discard a card from your hand, and call 2 plant tokens to rearguard circle. So this by itself doesn't seem too insane. It is nice because it does let you get either boosters out, or say you weren't able to set up for Grajiorl Dragon properly. You have 1 rear plant token in a front row rearguard circle, but your other front row rearguard circle is a leftover, say, Master Wisteria, or really any non-plant token unit. Well, you can call the Master Wisteria, use its skill to call the 2 plant tokens over that other column, still getting you your 5 attacks. So it helps when you don't have necessarily ideal setups, and it doesn't let you make awkward plays to try to get those setups. So that itself is really nice, but not really worth a counterblast 1 or a discard 1, even if those plant tokens are improved. What really makes this card worth it is the rest of that effect that says that you can choose one of your other units, search your deck for 1 card with the same name as that unit, add to your hand, and shuffle your deck. Oh, you have to reveal it, don't forget that. But that effect, rest of that effect, I feel is insane, because while it can't add itself, if you're calling it to rearguard circle, you can add a copy of your Vanguard to your hand to secure another force marker for next turn. If you don't need it, you can call the other card you called off of Grajiorl Dragon's ability. Copy that. You can get extra shield to hand. You can set up for a really good call next turn with, say, the Grade 2 Grajiorl Dragon for more power on the calling it out. So all in all, it's so much extra utility that you don't mind discarding because you're not really losing value. Instead, you're just improving the quality of your hand while also improving the quality of your board at the same time. As this card and Grajiorl Dragon are the only ones that counterblast, I think it's fine to run this card. And honestly, I feel takes the deck. Is kind of what the deck needs to take it to the next level. Its final effect is an on attack on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. You can Soul Blast 1, the only card that Soul Blast in this deck. What it does is you choose one of your units, and all your units with the same name as that unit get power plus 5,000 until end of turn. If it's on Vanguard Circle, those units get 10,000 instead of 5,000. This card should never be on your Vanguard Circle, but on Rearguard Circle, it's just an extra power up for your plant tokens. Since they all have the same name, you can easily give them all an extra 5k, meaning you're essentially getting 15k attack or 15k boost with this card in play. All in all, I think that's great. Just a little extra bump to your board on top of a great effect to begin with. With all our main call targets out of the way, let's talk about some ones that are definitely still good to call if you have nothing better to do, but also serve other purposes in the deck. The first one here is Maiden of Sweetberry. She's nice because as long as you're on grade 3, this unit has power plus 5,000 during your turn, meaning a 13k attacker or booster. Making better numbers is always great. The other nice thing is, when placed on Vanguard Rearguard Circle, you can call one plant token to Rearguard Circle. And if your Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, you Soul Charge 1. The Soul Charge really isn't necessary, since Master Wisteria is the only one Soul Blasting, and a lot of times you can search out another copy of your grade 3, which gets you an extra soul when you re-ride. But really what it's useful for is calling that extra plant token. Now, if you're in a scenario, as I explained with Master Wisteria, with one column with a plant token in the front row, and the other column with a non-plant token in the front row, this card gives you another out to that if you don't have Master Wisteria, as you can call Maiden of Sweetberry and just call a plant token over it. And it will be an improved plant token as long as you're on Grajiorl Dragon. This card's also nice as it's a great ride target. Obviously, we would rather ride the grade 1 Grajiorl Dragon, but we won't always have that in hand, as we will only see a maximum of 11 cards by the time you're ready to ride on your first grade 3 turn. So just having another option that can bolster your board for extra attack or extra power is great. Do note, though, it will only be the 5k plant token when placed on Vanguard Circle, but that's still fine. It's still extra power. It's still a good play regardless, and you can always call over it later or throw it on a force marker, swing for 15, and call over it with something with Grajiorl Dragon's effect. In a similar vein, we have Maiden of Flower Carpet, whose first ability reads that when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you call a plant token to Rearguard Circle. So everything I just said about the similar ability from Maiden of Sweetberry also applies to this card. Now, the real reason I run this over some other things is because I think running more grade 1s in this deck feels really good for the extra 10k shield. As you're not really calling too much to board, you're mostly filling it with plant tokens and then Grajiorl's call, just having the extra shield value makes this deck even tankier while also multi-attacking. The other use for this card is in its second effect, that in drop zone, at the end of your turn, you can retire 2 plant tokens to return to hand. While in most cases, this doesn't sound good because you're giving up 20k shield for 10k shield, the reason I like this card is if you're against a matchup where your opponent will try to remove your plant tokens and can remove even just 2 of your plant tokens. Because by using Maiden of Flower Carpet's ability, you can secure 10k in shield in hand when you would have really lost 20k if you hadn't done this effect. So all in all, I think this is it's a more utility card, but when it's at worst a 10k shield in hand and a good ride target, I think that's more than worth running it for those scenarios. Also, I will say, of the other options, this one felt the best to me, even if it is a bit more situational. The final grade one I wanted to talk about was Valkyrie Reclamation Padmini. She is our good old look at top 5, reveal a grade 3, add it to hand, and discard a card. So this card's good because, again, it just means all our grade 1s are phenomenal ride targets. If for whatever reason we're still struggling to find our Grajiorl Dragon, we didn't see the grade 2, or we didn't see the grade 1 to get the grade 2, whatever the scenario is, we whiffed the grade 2's ability. This is just another way to try to find our Grajiorl Dragon to make sure we get on it. Furthermore, this deck will definitely have plant tokens out, and this one's just 13k booster. So everything I said about Maiden of Sweetberry being a 13k booster also applies to Padmini. As consistent as this deck is, I will say that Padmini feels like it'd be the one most likely cut, because we are seeing our grade 3 Grajiorl Dragons pretty consistently, so this could open up deck space if needed. Also of note with Pad Mini, it can help us search out our Master Wisteria for combos, so that's definitely a play to keep in mind. And it also helps us search out our Heal Guardians if necessary, so there definitely is more value than just finding Grajiorl Dragon in this card. So all these cards I've talked about so far have been 4-ofs. And with deck building in V-Era, outside of triggers, you can have 30, and the starter, you can have 33 normal units. And running all of them at 4 means that you'll be up at 32 and have 1 slot left. So what do I run as my 1-of? I chose Fruitasaur Dragon as a fun 1-of for right now, because it gains the original power of all your Grade 0 rearguards during your turn on both Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. So my idea is, this is just a big beat stick. At least 43,000 on if you call it off of Grajiorl Dragon's ability. Or I shouldn't even say call off Grajiorl Dragon's ability. Just as long as you have 3 plant tokens in your back row, you can call this down as a 43k attacker. And everyone likes a big beater, so just a fun little tech. This really could be anything you want it to be. I just thought this one should never be bad, so why not run it? Getting into the triggers, I decided to play it very consistently with 4 Heal Guardians because they're still really good if you get rushed down. Despite this deck having a lot of shield value, it really gets access to that shield value in the late game, and having Heal Guardians just means that you're more likely to survive early rush, and also help you kind of keep up high shield value in the late game as well by not having to commit as many cards early on when you have one of these. So all in all, really good. There isn't much else to be said about these Heal Guardians. Most people run them. Next up, I chose to run 4 draw trick of the draw PGs because these are just good. Again, against large columns, this is just a free way to block them instead of having to drop a ton of cards. While this deck definitely has more shield value to guard those higher attacks, I still think just being able to 2-card guard something to preserve that shield value just makes this deck way more intimidating and can really grind out games with that high shield value and the multi-attack. Plus, draw triggers are always just good to dig a bit deeper into your deck, and I don't think that's excluded from this deck. One final note over running this over the Crit Sentinels is because since it's a multi-attack deck, while crits can be nice for sure, I don't think it's as necessary to like go 12 crit and just try to sack crits the entire time, especially with how tanky this deck is. You can play the somewhat long game. I shouldn't say long game, but you can play well into the late game. Finally, I run 8 crits. Doesn't matter which ones, they just have to not be the Crit Sentinels because of running the draw PGs. Crits are just good, they'll always be good. This deck doesn't need any more draws, so the 15k shield is just nice to have in general. For the starter, I run Arboros Dragon Ratoon just to pay homage to Arboros Dragon Sephiroth. You can really run any starter that you choose to. So with the deck list out of the way, the general playstyle is you want to ride any of your amazing Grade 1 rearguards. If ideally the Grade 1 Grajiorl to search out the Grade 2, you really want to try to go into the Grade 2 Grajiorl at all times to find your Grade 3 Gajiorl Dragon, but honestly, it doesn't matter as long as you find your Grade 3 Gajiorl Dragon in the end. And then from there, you just want to keep generating plant tokens, set up your full board, swing with your 2 plant token rearguards, swing with Gajiorl Dragon, and call some combination of Wisteria, the 2 Grajiorl Dragons, Maiden of Fallvine, and if you need to fill in from any of the other cards, any of the other normal units here. And just try to multi-attack your opponent, and also bolster the fact that you can intercept with back row plant tokens to gain extra shield to be a really tanky deck that can keep both a big hand and set up even more shield on board. As for what force marker to go to, I was really keeping in mind Force 1 in this deck just to make better numbers, as my main focus really is getting power on the calls, so going Force 2 means that your plant tokens really don't hit unless you boost with them before you get off Gajiorl Dragon's effect. That being said, I can definitely see switching around some of the deck to include cards that bolster themselves on the first attack to run Force 2 to more easily threaten lethal early on. While I don't know how well that build will do on paper, the theory's still there. I personally just like the Force 1 idea better because this deck can be so tanky and aggressive at the same time. I don't think you really need to try to be pushing for game that early and just the higher numbers will win over time. With that being said, some notable cards to keep in mind for possible inclusions in the deck as you add text and change up ratios is Sunlight Garden's Guide. Her ability lets you pretty much double the plant tokens you have on Rearguard Circle, though you can only call them to open Rearguard Circles. The reason I like this card is because with her and Grajiorl Dragon on your Vanguard Circle, you can create a full board. Grajiorl Dragon, you just return a normal unit to the bottom of your deck, call 2 plant tokens, you call Sunlight Garden's Guide, she sees those 2 plant tokens, calls you 2 more, there's your 5 Rearguards. The reason I don't run it in my main deck right now is because I think it's more valuable to have the 10k shield from the grade 1, since we're really not, the only time we're committing cards is to kind of round out the board or Grajiorl Dragon's ability. And really where this card shines is if you have no plant tokens going into your turn 3, which a lot of times you will, since you have so many ride targets that can call that won't, and even if you get off the ideal ride line, sometimes you won't find the grade 2 Grajiorl Dragon or the grade 3, so it would be calling a plant token anyway. In which case, Sunlight Garden's Guide only calls you 1 plant token. The other nice use for this card is if you're against a heavy control deck, this can easily rebuild your board if they just keep getting rid of it turn after turn. But with that being said, we also have Maiden Flower Carpet, which can recur herself to kind of get rid of your board before your opponent can retire it anyway. So I think this is definitely a consideration for the deck, especially if you're playing against a lot of decks that get rid of your board. The final card of note is Arboros Dragon Sephiroth. I think this card fits better into the build where you want to kind of bolster more power before you go into on your first 2 rearguard swings before going into the multi-attack. And that's because Arboros Dragon can retire rearguard to call 2 plant tokens and give itself 10,000 power. So it's a 23k beater. So I think this is a better option than, say, Master Wisteria for maybe a Force 2 deck, because you really don't want too many grade 3s in this deck. Or maybe you want to try a really aggro grade 3 build. That's always a possibility as well. All in all, this really should never be your Vanguard because it's just worse than your Grajiorl Dragon. But still, I think it's a nice combo piece that can get you, secure you, you can change the 2... Pretty much you can change the 2 plant tokens you call for Grajiorl Dragon to 3 with this card and give it some power. Or you can even sack itself to call 2 plant tokens, which is a neat application of this card. All in all, though, I really want to test Master Wisteria and the focus of my deck more than those other alternate game plans first. So I hope you all enjoyed my preliminary deck list for the new Grajiorl Dragon. As I said at the beginning of this video, this is only a preliminary list, and I plan on posting updates when I get to deck test it and change things up. Also, I hope to see your all's discussion about what you've been testing with this deck and your results in the comments section down below. With that being said, I hope you all have a great day and happy card fighting.